Hello, my name's Scott Cole with Cole Photography. Several people have asked about the water drops that I've been doing lately. Today I'll give you a quick little run through of the setup and the equipment and what I do to do those raindrops. So let's start off by looking at just kind of the equipment for the setup.
Okay, the equipment is pretty simple. Use a digital SLR. Doesn't really mean that you have to. If you've got a point and shoot, you can probably do with it as long as it allows for the depth of field and the speed and handling the shutter response, because it's pretty quick action. I use a macro lens, remote shutter release. You need some kind of good light source, obviously. If you've got some kind of good still light, you can use that. But I use a flash, a remote release flash, and in this case I use the Paul Buff CyberSync transmitter and receiver to trigger that flash. The flash is completely set in manual mode, and I'll go through that a little bit later. Also clamps, these little cheap clamps. I think I picked them up around Christmas at maybe Home Depot or Lowe's, 99 cents a piece or something like that. The other part of the setup will be the actual place where we're shooting and keeping the water. Okay, I keep a tripod set up, something to hold the water. In this case I'm using just a dark baking pan. Got a backdrop set up on a rack on a frame. I've got one arm extended out that I use to hold a clamp that holds the bag with the water in it. You just use a regular Ziploc type sandwich bag to hold the water. Punch a hole in it, a small hole, and that allows for a pretty steady drip in the same location over and over again. And in this case I've got a piece of red cloth that is set up on the backdrop, and what I'm using that for is the light source is actually bounced off of the backdrop. Sometimes I use just a reflector. I've got a white reflector. You can use cloth, you can use prints on paper, anything to kind of get the color that you want to get in there. And that color can be monotone, or it can be something simple and complex, and even a rainbow or a myriad of colors. So those are the basic things. I will also have something that, another stand that I set that flash up on so that I can get the light source behind where the drop is and reflect it back into it so that I don't get burned out highlights in the water drop. Okay, now we move into the more completed setup. We've got the tripod, camera mounted, macro lens, remote shutter release, also the remote trigger mounted for the flash. I've got the pan with the water relatively full, trying to kind of minimize that reflective plane of water. Got the 580EX2 with the remote receiver connected to it, and that's just a rigged up kind of way to kind of get it down here on the plane. Reflection is low, coming off the red background on the back, and then on the bottom of it we do have the receiver connected by cable to the flash itself, and the water Ziploc bag suspended with a clip up high. And again, this backdrop is just to get this red coloration. It's just kind of clipped onto my bigger white backdrop that's mounted on the frame. And I do have another, this is one of my wife's scrapbook pieces of paper. I'm going to try that after I do the red, just for a look at what it looks like with a different background. I have shot the blue before just by using the white reflector as a backdrop and putting the white balance into the tungsten setting, and then that'll give you just from the white reflection blues too. So next we'll do a little setup with the punctured hole in the bag, showing you how to focus. You focus once, focus manually, focus down to where the drop is coming in, and then the settings will be the same from that point forward. Again, the manual setting I usually use with this setup about manual with about a negative quarter power strength on the 580EX setup like this, and my f-stop somewhere between f11 and f18. It gives me enough depth of field. Okay, this is just another little look at the manual settings that I'm using. Actually, it's a quarter strength, and it's about a third stop back from that in the manual mode. And then on the camera, I'm actually set at 1/250th for the sync on there for a higher speed sync, and I'm using f11 with a little bit of working distance. That should be enough depth of field, and ISO 100 obviously, and the white balance is set to match the flash, but of course you'll get the red color from the backdrop. Okay, now we have the water dripping from the bag down into the pan. It's actually a good bit faster pace than what I have had in the past. I may have a little bit too much water in the bag, putting too much pressure. But what I will do is hold an object, just happen to have my knife, right down where the water is dropping, and then I will use this for my focal point so I can get a clear focus. You know, it's usually somewhere just right in front of where the drop is coming in, but if you'll see, the drop is pretty consistent where it's landing. So that's the key factor with this setup, is that, you know, getting the same thing over and over and over again, and it's happening so rapidly that, you know, depending on how fast firing your camera is and your flash, you may get several out of a single drop, but it is pretty much an experiment that's kind of ongoing, and I usually try to set it up in time single shots and see what I get out of each one. And here goes some shots of the actual capture flashing. I'm going to leave the studio light on just so that you can see in the video the setup in its action. When I can get the drops to slow down, where they're kind of rhythmic and timed at a slower pace, it's easier to kind of go for the point of entry shooting like this, but here we go. Again, in the video it's going to look a little blown, but it's just the angle I'm looking at this and what it's exposing in video. And I'll share some of these in the end of the video. Here we are with, instead of the red backdrop, we have a piece of blue textured scrapbooking paper. We'll give it a few shots with that and see what the result looks like. See the color changing. Of course, it won't be as noticeable, maybe the texture in there, until you look at the closer details. Now the results look very similar to what I was getting in tungsten. And one more. Well, and that's about it for the drops, the water drops. Pretty much an intro and just kind of how I do the water drops, and I don't think it's very complex. Might require a little special equipment, but you can probably figure out a way to do it just rigging up things around your house. I was always good just using clip-on paint lamps and things like that with very bright bulbs in it to get things before, but I'm definitely getting more consistent results with this setup. Good luck to you.